Uh, so with that said, it kind of brings us back to um, why should I go to grad school, or some of the start thinking about the things to consider if you're making that jump. So some of the things, I'm just gonna list a few things. There's a whole multitude of things. It's more important for you to sort of think and reflect on oneself and see what's important for me, because for some people what they may be looking into school is, do they have a good football team, if I'm going to be having a good time at their tailgates or not. But you need to go and consider what is important to me, what am I looking for in a potential program. It's just some of the very basic things that we've discussed recently is, again, what's the duration of this degree, um, what kind of requirements are there in this program for, say, a project, a thesis, or perhaps they're looking for you to do an internship during this time. Or that might be a perk, that this particular program has something like that. Also, to see if a particular program has, a very strict or loose curriculum. In my case, USC had a very loose curriculum for the Astro department, where you sort of got to pick and choose what you wanted to go into. Classes that you thought were interested or were available, you could just take them. I mean, there was some structure that you had to follow, but for the most part, they allowed you that flexibility. And that might not be the same case with all programs. Some programs might be, you take these classes, you do this, you do that, and you graduate. So you have to consider whether that's something that you find important, whether you want to learn what you are interested in, or do you want to learn all these other things that you might not necessarily be interested in that come with a particular program. And also another thing to consider is what kind of resources are available to students. You have to think about a lot of things, especially if you're going to be moving out of state or whatnot. What kind of support do some of these departments have? Um, because on the surface, a package might seem very good. They might be giving you scholarships or whatnot, but say that may only last a year or so. um, just you have to really dig into some of these and find out what kind of resources do these departments provide to their students, and which ones are giving me the best bang for my buck. um, Also, in terms of the online stuff, like, do they offer full-time or part-time for some students? Because say you may be working at the moment, and you don't necessarily want to quit your job to go to school. You may need to look at the program and see if they're flexible in terms of the time they have their classes. Maybe their classes are in around noontime. It might be hard to schedule your work around, classes in the middle of the week and around noontime. So you have to sort of play around with that and see if that's something that, if the department and the program is friendly, if you are a working professional. But if not, if you're just going from undergrad to grad school, then that might not necessarily be a concern for you. Again, this is something for one should tailor to their own preferences and needs. I'm not necessarily advocating, things for someone to, I rank these. That's why I don't necessarily have any numbers here to say these are the most important, because some may be more important than others for, different people. It's really more about self-reflection and seeing what do I value and what do I want out of this program. Yeah, online or in-person classes. Um, so on a high level, more questions to ask yourself in order to self-reflect. Again, to go back, why do I want this degree? What are my goals? Um, if you want to go to graduate school simply because you need something to do because you might not necessarily have a job lined up, that could be a valid, reason to go to graduate school. But just realize that there's a lot of risk involved, because graduate school can be very expensive. And a lot of the time, FAFSA and free financial aid doesn't necessarily carry over to graduate school. So you may be taking on a lot of student loans in order to go to school. So you don't want to necessarily start going to school and maybe you land a job and you may think, I don't necessarily like this program or going to school. I just want to work. And suddenly, you've spent money that you have to pay back to, the government or, wherever you got the money from. So try to reflect, why do I need this graduate degree? Is it worth the risk that I'm taking on in terms of financial investment? What are my goals? And how does this play into those goals? Um, then you have to do reflection on what kind of program in school best fits those goals. If your goal is to work and you see yourself, climbing the ladder at work and you want to get that degree or take the next step in your career, and you don't necessarily have the time to dedicate to a PhD, and maybe you're looking more to in a managerial position, then perhaps an MBA better suits the kind of the goals you're looking for, and the particular set of schools will suffice. Maybe you don't need to go to Wharton or Harvard and pay out of state tuition and all that. Maybe something like Cal State Long Beach or something suits your goals best. It's all about these trades between what you value and what is important. Some more detailed questions to ask yourself is, once you start getting more involved in some of this processes, how am I going to finance this? One particular option is definitely student loans. A lot of the time you are able to secure subsidized loans from the government. They usually carry low interest rates and you don't have to pay them back. But even the unsubsidized loans, they tend to have pretty good interest rates to them, and sometimes they're a lot better than having to go out and get a private loan from a financial institution. There's a lot of ways you can do it. Scholarships are another good option. Um, it's a little bit more of an effort that takes to apply for fellowships and scholarships, especially if you're trying to work, because some scholarships may require you to be a full-time student. So it's a lot of research you have to do into how to make this work. And for some of us, it may be simple as, oh, I'm just going to work and that's how I'm going to pay for school. But for some people, it may be a much more complicated, involving, a combination of loans and, fellowships and scholarships and so forth. Um, Another thing to ask yourself, and this one I think is a good point, is, do I have the necessary time management or time to dedicate to some of this? Because not all of us, have the same situations where we may have families of our own at this moment that we need to take care of, or other things that are much more pressing at the moment, and suddenly having to dedicate, a lot of hours of your time to, studying and getting things done. It causes a lot of stress, and I found myself during grad school a lot of the time not having the same amount of time as undergrad, where I could take hours, to tackle a problem. Like sometimes in graduate school, if I only had certain amount of time after work to work on homework, and if I got stuck on something, I needed to go and ask someone for help, because I simply did not have the luxury of being able to stay stuck on a problem for a long time. And to sort of build up on that, another thing one should reflect upon oneself is, um, how am I in terms of my mental state? Um, because sometimes, especially if you're going to master's programs or PhDs, graduate school can take a big toll on one's mental health. And you're starting to see a lot more of these schools start providing more and more mental health services to students, because especially if you're at a PhD, doing research and all of that, um, you're under pressure not only to teach classes, to do research, to apply for grants, to apply for scholarships, and you're not getting enough sleep. And, a lot of this builds up, and you need to, ask yourself, if, you have, you're at a point in time where you're able to have a support system that can carry you through a lot of these tribulations, because it takes a lot out of you when it gets really involved. And the last thing you want to do is to be in a point where you're broken down and you decide, I can't do this anymore, and suddenly you all the time and money you put into this effort, you may walk away from it, and that's something you definitely don't want to be doing. It might be the right decision, but you could have taken the time earlier on to reflect on that and seen if that was the wisest decision to make at the beginning. So with that said, you don't necessarily need to have all the answers before you start, but you do need to research enough to make an informed decision. And part of that research, apart from like schools and all that, again, is to do that self-reflection and see what are your goals, what do you want to get out of this, and from that you sort of formulate and to start making that decision on whether to pursue this or not. Okay, so I guess that was most of what I had to say. There's a lot more stuff I guess that we could have said in regards to that, but I wanted to take some time here to I guess uh, provide another perspective from other people who are also going through this process, and to sort of give you guys their perspective on how they went about this process, because I went to graduate school back in 2015, 2016, graduated last year. So, I mean, things haven't changed too much, but there's still a lot that, one can learn from someone who's just going through that process right now. So I know I have Diana on the line, and I also invited a couple of other fellow alumni and contacts that I know. I have Thomas and Antonio as well. Um, do we have Erwin today? Well, anyways, so I invited some of these guys to sort of give their 2 cents on this, and I also provided some questions to sort of get the ball rolling in terms of giving some of that feedback. But I guess before we start on that, um, I guess can we take a opportunity to sort of introduce yourselves and just quickly give us a rundown of who you are, I guess where you went to school, and if you're working, where you're working now, and I guess we can get more into schools once we get there. I guess we can start with you, Diana. That's okay.
Hi everyone. So Erwin had to leave. So yeah. So my name is Deanna Castro. I went to Cal State Long Beach. I got my degree in aerospace engineering. I graduated in 2017, and I've been working at Northrop Grumman since then. I've moved around a lot, so I've had various roles within the company. And right now, I'm looking to go to grad school. I applied in the past and was admitted, but I wasn't ready at the time to go. So a lot of the things I've been focusing at work is kind of finding out what I do like and what I don't like, so that when I go to a grad program, I have a better idea of what I want to pursue with the specialty. And then I think that's it. If anybody else wants to go.
Antonio, Thomas.
I can take the next one. Yeah, everyone. Thomas graduated fall 2016. Currently work for SoCal Edison. Why I want to go to grad school? I'm actually looking for a career change. trying to go into public policy, and there's a whole story behind that. But I think that Ivan hit the nail on the head when it came to self-reflection.
All right, Antonio.
Hi, I'm Antonio. I graduated from UC Irvine in the fall of 2018. I majored in aerospace engineering, and I currently just got admitted into Cal State Long Beach for a master's in aerospace engineering. The motivation behind that was kind of like a change of not career so much. I still want to stay in the defense industry, but I want to specialize a little more in engineering for space applications, and hopefully find something that I want to do a future PhD in. So halfway plan there.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for that. I see you kind of got into the first question that I had there. So I prepared a couple of questions here to sort of get the ball rolling. And the first one was, why did you decide to go back to graduate school? I think, Antonio, you hit the point there. Not sure if Thomas or Diana, if you want to elaborate more on your decision.
Yeah, so I'll start. So at Northrop, I guess the way that you can move up within your ranks is by pursuing a graduate degree. So for folks who already have a graduate degree, they come in as T2s. And if you only have a bachelor's, you come in as a T1. But it also, so it helps you get a promotion, was one of the reasons why I wanted to go to grad school now. And also I've been out of school for 3 years. So I definitely want to go back as soon as possible now rather than waiting any more time, just because I feel like I don't want to get out of that like school mindset. It's going to be like, I already know it's going to be somewhat of a challenge going back, but I don't want to spend any more time out of school. And then, yeah, so those were the main 2 reasons right now why I want to go back to grad school.
So my intentions really fall back on having that like moment of self-reflection. You know, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, or actually maybe even, yeah, like I guess 3 or 4 years ago, if I wanted to go back to school, I would have said hell no. Like I hated school. But then I realized like, wow, it's like really, really important because it's more of like career-wise, yeah, like, you know, it's a good resume builder, but also, you know, kind of that disconnect from when you finish school to now. You know, a lot's changed. You've kind of been exposed to the real world, and you know, I've come to understand that like there's just so much to learn, and you know, it's part of the adaptation in life, and you know, kind of learning about yourself too and growing as a person. But to go deep, not too deep into my intent, you know, given the current political climate and circumstances, you know, I've been complaining about it for so long. So I was like, you know what, like I should probably do something about it. So I really felt passionate about it, and I started getting involved in the community. And that's when I decided to like do the research into the programs, and realize that like it's possible as a first gen, you know, Mexican American to really like, if you push yourself, you can do it. You know, that just having that mentality, and yeah, I can go deeper into that later on as well.
Okay. I guess I could give a little bit about my background. So I decided to go back to graduate school because in my undergrad I had studied aerospace engineering, and the program was sort of a mix of both astronautical and aeronautical, and I ended up specializing in aeronautical for, I guess, more expediency reasons to graduate and so forth. But after doing a lot of reflection on in terms of what I wanted to do after school, I definitely did want to go back to school because I always loved learning, and I always wanted to get deeper and more technical in some of these fields. And after reflecting, I realized that from the two, I particularly like astronautical engineering, the space side of aerospace engineering. So that's why I decided to go back and do my master's and specifically focus on space side of aerospace engineering. Okay. That wasn't too, I guess, out there, but I guess we can move on to the next question that I have prepared here. So what kind of programs were, I guess, you looking for, or were looking for, and what was there anything that was a deal breaker for you? So I guess I can start with this. For me, the kinds of programs that I was looking for was, like I mentioned, I wanted the programs for them to be focused on space. I know there's a lot of great aerospace engineering departments out there across the country, but I made the effort to look and find programs that specifically had a focus on either astro or focused on a particular subset of aeronautical engineering, but that was more out there in terms of like hypersonics and stuff, that I had a more particular focus on. And those were the programs that I was putting most of my attention to. And for me, sort of if there was any deal breakers for me was just the, I guess for me, it was a little bit more of an intuition, like a vibe. Like if I felt like there was a good vibe to the school in terms of if they provided their students with, like in Long Beach, where they had a really good, I guess, student community to it. That's something for me that I found pretty important in my undergrad years. And I guess if there was any other deal breakers, it was usually if it was really pricey or not. But that ended up not being so much of a concern later on. But for me, definitely a good deal breaker was if they had a space aspect to their aerospace engineering department.
Well, I guess I could go next. For me, to choose a program, primarily, I knew I was going to be working full time. So I had to find a program that was more friendly to the schedule of a working professional. I found that in Cal State Long Beach, it was advertised as being a good program for working professionals. So that was the first thing I looked at as far as potential deal breakers. If something would require too much time of me, or if classes were not like in the later hours of the day. And I guess secondarily would be the price. I think Cal States are great institutions. A lot of my coworkers went, and a lot of my classmates from UCI, they also went to Cal State Long Beach, specifically for the programs that that I got into, and they just had great things to say about it. And the price was it couldn't be beat, so that was a big factor as well. And other institutions, well, there'd be deal breakers. Companies, they do offer to help to pay, but you have to sign certain agreements to work for the company after a certain amount of time. And if you don't meet them, you end up paying the company back. So I figured if this is going to be a bit of a career changer, this grad school experience, I would rather go to a school that I could pay for, and it wouldn't be it wouldn't break the bank.
Okay. Thomas, Diana?
Want to go, Diana?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So for me, I guess the main thing I'm looking for when selecting a grad program is if they're interdisciplinary. So mostly looking at what kind of projects the faculty are working on. So my background is aerospace. I do want to stay in either working on air or space. I'm pretty open to either or. But I definitely wanted to also kind of tie in like a science field. So there's some faculty members who kind of will, like, you can work on a project and have two different faculty members. Like for me, the ones I was looking at was one in the planet, like an advisor that was in planetary science, and then an advisor that's in astronautical engineering. So that way, so I was pretty much, yeah, if the program was interdisciplinary is the main thing I was looking for. I do think I will be selecting a program either in mechanical or electrical engineering. And that's just based on the classes themselves, kind of more of what I want to look into. So yeah.
The programs that I've been looking for or looking at are, they're going to be full-time. So I'm actually set on 2 specific programs. And the reason why is at least those particular programs that I've researched, the faculty really mattered to me because these are people that have been involved in public policy. You know, you're talking about like Nobel laureates or diplomats, you know, just people really involved that you wouldn't really get that from certain institutions. Not to say that there's anything wrong with those institutions, but I can talk about that later on when I went to go visit these schools, but it's like you really get that understanding because in grad school, you know, you're doing a lot of case studies, for example, you know, in your research. And in these particular institutions, these are the people that like were part of those case studies. So you're actually getting that experience like one-on-one. So that and the cost of it, of course. So I'm actually looking at like into Ivy League schools, and there are some schools that offer like a fully funded program. And that's a big deal because not a lot of people do that. It is highly like competitive, but if you can get into a program that's fully funded, I mean, there's really, you know, you're pretty much set there, and your focus would just be completely in your studies, and you don't have to worry about all the externalities as far as, you know, living and all that. Which of course is very difficult, especially if you have like a full-time job or if you've got to worry about family. You know, there's a lot of programs that exist that were willing to work with you as far as accommodating your needs, provided, you know, you have something to contribute to the program as well. So for me, a deal breaker would definitely be cost and location. I mean, I plan to move to the East Coast, and I really hate the cold. But I mean, you know, it's one of those trade-offs that I think it'd be necessary to make.
Okay. Just I guess a very quick point I wanted to ask Antonio about the difference between class prices between something like Cal State Long Beach and in my case USC. For me, the average price per class, it was about $1,800 a unit. So for a 3-unit class, it was about $7,000. And I want to say, how much was it for you, Antonio? Or how much is it going to be in Cal State Long Beach?
I don't remember what the per unit cost was. Some programs are more expensive. They have like an additional cost per unit, but in total, because I'm going to be a part-time student, my first semester was $2,600, and that's everything included.
Yeah.
Although it's going to be on Zoom, so I don't know.
Hopefully they're not charging you any gym membership fees or anything like that.
No.
Yeah, and so that sort of goes to show how like the difference in how some of these schools can be in terms of price. My semester actually was my first semester. I only took like 2 classes, 2 or 3, but again, like $6,000 per class. It's like, you know, $12,000 to $14,000 per semester, and it can add up quite a bit. So it's something to definitely take into account before you make the jump into a program like that. So there's definitely differences between private and public institutions. Okay, so I guess next question that we have here, I have 2 more questions. I guess we can go into these, or any of the students who might have any questions, we can answer those as well. I know we're already about an hour in, so I guess I'll try to make this one as quick as I can. Did you go visit any schools or tours of any programs? And I guess I can start that off. I ended up actually did going on, I think, 2 or 3 tours. Um, I took a tour of USC, obviously. It was right here, and also Cal State Long Beach, and when I applied there as well. But I also was actually given the opportunity to go to University of Michigan, because I did get an offer there for a PhD um, in aerospace engineering, and they definitely wine and dined me. They flew me out at their expense, and gave me all these trinkets and stuff, and took me on a tour of their department and their facilities and all that. And it was pretty interesting to experience that, and to really get a feel of what they have to offer you, and to be able to talk to the faculty there. That was something that was very eye-opening, to be able to talk to the faculty, and not just talk about like, oh, you can study here at this the student whatever study rooms or whatever. It's like, talk to the professor who you might be working with, and what projects they do, and what interests you, what do you want to do. Those are the kind of questions they were asking, and the things that you need to ask yourself as well when you are on before and during these trips. So yeah, I did go on tours, and that helped me make my decision. It made my decision actually very hard for between USC and Michigan, but I ended up choosing USC. Anyone else want to share?
I can share my experience. 2 of the schools that I visited. So the first one was a Princeton program for the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs. It was a great experience. I mean, kind of like how Ivan said, you get to meet the faculty, and these are pretty like well-known people, like in their respective professions, and I was able to like sit in on a few classes and interact with students, interact with the professors, and they were very like welcoming. And I didn't like know what to expect. When it came to like an Ivy League school, you would assume the worst, but they're actually really great people, and I really admire the diversity that they had there. They really do their best to express inclusion. And the professors that I interacted with, like, they even like gave me their contact info, like, hey, reach out if you have any questions. And even being able to participate in the classroom with them, to really get that experience, to me was very rewarding. And that's when I learned that, like, Princeton is a fully funded program. So, if you get in, you're covered for everything. So that made me really like want to pursue that particular program. I also checked out Harvard. Funny way how that came about is at a symposium about like 3 years ago, they had a table for the MBA program there at the Harvard Business School. And I just happened to walk by and speak to the person there, the recruiter, and gave me his business card, and I kept up to date with the newsletters. And then they had mentioned a particular weekend called Diversity Day, where you go and meet with the students and professors and all that. And they also had their Latino Business Association having a conference that weekend too. So I just want to check it out, and I really got a feel for the school itself, and seeing other Latinos in such a highly prestigious institution. Also being very welcoming and just reaching out really made me believe, like, wow, like, growing up, I don't think I could like ever consider like going to one of these schools, but they really like show you that it's possible, and they reach out, like they really like want you to succeed. Even though like the Harvard program is like $100,000, they do express that, like, okay, well, even though it is that much, it's an investment, like, where you're guaranteed a job that pays a minimum of $150K a year, like right off the bat, so they have these incentives that really make the cost like not much of a big deal. so those are great experiences, being able to have traveled over there and meeting the people, and now like it's getting that ball rolling with them.